Hello.
After a brief pause, my daughter Emma answered the phone. She sounded oddly nervous, and I couldn't help but ask, "Emma?" "It's Mom. Where are you right now?"
Who is this? Mom is right next to me.
I thought Emma might be playing a prank. She wasn't the type to do such things, but kids grow up quickly. Perhaps she had picked up some mischievous behavior without my knowledge. "Emma, what's going on? Pranks like this aren't okay."
It's not a prank. Mom is here next to me. My mom, she's gone.
Then who is this a mom?
Mom is my new mom.
With those words, everything became clear. My name is Natalia. I'm currently a freelance writer. I married my husband, Miles, 7 years ago. 2 years later, we welcomed our daughter, Emma. Emma is incredibly adorable, and Miles and I have poured endless love into her. Despite our occasional arguments, it's safe to say that Emma has held our marriage together. I believe we'll continue living together until Emma grows up, even if it means arguing along the way. Mom, how are you feeling?
Don't worry, I'm fine. Just a little tired.
But there was one thing weighing on my mind, my mother back home. My father passed away a few years ago, leaving my mother living alone. She always respected my father, standing quietly behind him with a gentle smile. She left an impression of strength. However, after my father's death, my mother's health began to decline. I constantly worried about her. If only I could visit home more often, but it's quite far from where we live. Whenever possible, Emma and I went home to my parents' house, and when it wasn't, I checked in with her over the phone. Since I'll likely be able to come home this week, if there's anything you need, please let me know.
You don't have to worry so much about me.
As my mother said this while smiling, she seemed quite frail, and an unpleasant premonition lingered in my mind. Unfortunately, that premonition turned out to be true, and soon my mother spent even more time lying in bed. Around that time, it became difficult to visit home in sync with Emma's nursery schedule. I started making solo trips back home, leaving Emma in Miles' care. Sorry to bother you, but can I ask a favor? Despite feeling apologetic, I asked Miles in that manner. However, he always responded with a disapproving expression.
I work at the office every day, and I'm exhausted.
Yes, I understand. But I'm worried about my mother.
Just because you're worried about your mother, does that mean you can neglect your duties as a wife?
It's not like that. Miles sighed conspicuously. While I understood Miles' perspective, I couldn't help but think that since we were family, we should support each other. After all, I wasn't a stay-at-home mom. I worked as a writer and sometimes had to travel for assignments. It wasn't just Miles who faced challenges. But then, something unexpected happened with Miles.
Leave Emma to me.
Huh?
I've been thinking. You're working so hard. Besides, taking Emma with you every time you visit your parents' home must tire her out.
Well, yes.
And since you're a freelancer, you have more flexibility alone. It's more practical for me to take care of Emma.
That makes sense. For some reason, Miles enthusiastically volunteered to look after Emma. I was taken aback by his sudden change. I wondered if I could truly entrust Emma to him. but Miles had always adored Emma, and at that time, my mother's health was deteriorating significantly. So, I decided to leave Emma in his care until my mother's condition improved a bit. In hindsight, that decision was a mistake. Now, all I feel is regret. After that, I became extremely busy, spending more time on work-related trips and at my parents' house than at home. The act of carrying my laptop while visiting my mother was quite burdensome, but thanks to Miles taking care of Emma, it became much easier. However, during that time, something seemed off with Emma. Emma, what were you doing today?
I was out with Dad.
Since Miles started looking after Emma, she began acting strangely distant toward me. When I asked her anything, she avoided eye contact and nervously answered. I wondered if Miles had influenced her somehow, but when I asked Emma, she simply replied, "It's nothing." Even when I tried to confront Miles, he just got angry and said, "There's nothing going on." Juggling caregiving and work, I couldn't dedicate much time to this issue. Besides, Miles seemed oddly intent on keeping Emma away from me. Something must be going on, I thought, but I couldn't take action. Then, one day, I received a sudden call. My mother had collapsed. It was a stroke. Ironically, it happened the day after I returned home from visiting my mother. I rushed back to her house. Fortunately, someone saw my mother collapse in a public place, and she was quickly taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, the damage was severe, and she passed away. I stayed at my parents' house, handling various arrangements. My mother lay on the bed, seemingly asleep, and it was hard to grasp that she would never wake up. But the reality was that she was gone, and time moved forward regardless of my feelings. When everything was prepared, I contacted Miles to attend the funeral.
Can I skip it?
What?
I have an important job the next day.
It's a family funeral. Can't you take a day off if you explain the reason?
She wasn't my parent.
Why would you say that?
You're so annoying. Fine, I'll go on the day of the funeral.
After Miles hung up, I sat there, a mix of anger and disbelief. Even with a busy job, isn't it natural to be there for family during times of sorrow? Miles had hesitated even about attending the funeral. Naturally, Miles didn't help with the preparations. Instead, my aunt and her daughter and her husband volunteered to assist on the day of the funeral. There were many things I didn't understand, and I would have been lost on my own. Thanks to them, I managed to complete all the arrangements, but I felt utterly exhausted. I'm incredibly grateful to my aunt's daughter and her husband, even though they were practically strangers. As for Miles, he arrived just in the nick of time for the funeral and left immediately afterward. Whenever relatives asked about him, I'd vaguely smile and say, "He's a busy person." After the funeral, I planned to return home right away. I felt I needed to resolve things with Miles. However, there were numerous tasks related to my mother's inheritance and changing the property title. Ultimately, I couldn't return home for several days. When I finally got back home, I couldn't believe my eyes. What? My house, which I hadn't visited in a while, felt eerily empty. It seemed like no one had been there for quite some time. I checked inside, and to my surprise, all of Miles' belongings and household items were gone. What is going on? I searched every room. Emma's belongings were also missing. Panicking, I contacted Emma. I had given Emma a child-friendly smartphone. I had reservations about letting a 5-year-old have a phone, but as a freelance writer, I occasionally traveled for interviews. Miles also worked, leaving Emma alone at times. Having a means of communication was essential in case of emergencies. So, Emma had her own smartphone.
Hello.
After a few rings, Emma answered the phone. She sounded oddly nervous, and I couldn't help but ask, "Emma?" "It's Mom. Where are you right now?"
Who is this? Mom is right next to me.
Huh? I thought Emma might be playing a prank. She wasn't the type to do such things, but kids grow up quickly. Perhaps she had picked up some mischievous behavior without my knowledge. "Emma, what's wrong? Pranks like this aren't okay."
It's not a prank. Mom is right next to me. My mom, she's gone.
In Emma's tearful voice, I suddenly realized that something unimaginable might be happening. For now, I needed to calm Emma down and find out about Miles. Emma, it's okay. Can you tell me calmly? How is Dad doing?"
Dad is at work. He's working for Mom and me.
Then who is this a mom?
Mom is my new mom.
With those words, everything became clear. Miles suddenly taking care of Emma was all connected to this. And I could speculate that Miles had influenced Emma and taken her away. I focused on dispelling Emma's misunderstanding. Fortunately, Emma didn't fully believe what Miles had told her, and she listened to my words sincerely. Her distant behavior during the call was because Miles had deleted my contact information from her phone. I was furious at Miles for such cruel actions.
Are you truly my mom?
Yes. Don't worry. Please wait. I'll come get you.
Yes.
After ending the call with Emma, I immediately dialed Miles. He didn't answer right away, likely busy with work, but I persisted. Eventually, he picked up.
What? I'm working right now.
Hey. What did you do?
You're so annoying.
Where are you right now?
Oh, so you finally noticed. You've been busy taking care of your mother's house since you've been completely absorbed in your mother affairs.
But it was my mother's funeral. You never helped, and...
There's a limit to everything. Besides, your mother wasn't my parent, so I don't owe her any assistance.
Miles continued with a sigh.
You don't do any housework or cooking, and Emma is entirely my responsibility. You're not a good wife.
What are you saying?
I'm preparing for a divorce. I plan to find a better wife than you and remarry. I've decided to sell the house too, so get rid of your stuff.
I was left speechless. Certainly, I may have neglected some household chores and childcare due to caring for my mother. But isn't that understandable? Besides, it's not like I did nothing. When I was at home, I tried to handle household tasks as much as possible for Emma and Miles, all while juggling my work as a writer and looking after my mother. Miles' words were incredibly harsh considering all this. And on top of that, he referred to my mother as a stranger. His behavior was beyond unacceptable, and I resolved firmly to break up with Miles. After ending the call, I immediately started preparing for the divorce. Miles seemed to imply that it was my fault we were divorcing, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I had valid reasons for being away from home. Moreover, Miles hadn't contributed significantly to my mother's funeral, and if his recent words were any indication, he had been unfaithful during the time I was at my parents' house. Clearly, he was in the wrong. Additionally, Miles mentioned his intention to sell our home. Yet, this house was in my name. We had purchased it using the inheritance I received when my father passed away. At the time, I was pregnant and considering moving to a family-friendly apartment. So, I used the lump sum to buy the apartment outright. Even though we were married, the inherited assets were mine alone. Originally, I hadn't planned on divorce, so I didn't see any issues. But now the situation had changed. Upon investigation, I discovered that all the real estate documents that should have been at home were missing. Unbelievably, Miles had taken them and used our home as collateral. This was undoubtedly criminal behavior. I hired a private investigator. The facts gradually came to light. While I was caring for my mother at my parents' house, Miles had been cheating all along. And he had done so with Emma in tow. It appeared that Miles had convinced Emma that Mom had abandoned Emma and manipulated her into accepting the affair partner as her new mother. Furthermore, Miles had lied to the affair partner, claiming to be a single father raising Emma, all while planning to remarry using Emma as leverage. To make matters worse, he intended to use the money from selling our home to build a new one with the affair partner. Miles' actions were beyond reprehensible, and I felt nauseated by them. First and foremost, I had to reclaim Emma. With that determination, I immediately took action. I consulted a lawyer and filed for a court case. During the trial, Miles was quite reluctant to relinquish custody of Emma to me.
I have more financial stability.
Well, I earn enough to provide for Emma comfortably. Our discussions reached an impasse. However, Emma's words became the decisive factor.
I want to live with Mom.
Respecting Emma's wishes, I gained custody, and we proceeded with the divorce. At that time, I decided to claim compensation for the affair-related emotional distress and child support.
Wait a minute! What does this mean?
By initiating the legal proceedings, Miles was exposed for not having divorced as he claimed. Consequently, the affair partner also accused him of fraud and demanded compensation. As a result, Miles now struggles financially due to payments for emotional distress to me and child support, as well as compensation to the affair partner. Currently, he supplements his income from his main job with late-night part-time work, barely making ends meet. It's entirely his own doing. On the other hand, Emma and I moved to a location near elementary and middle schools, close to the train station. I considered Emma's growth process in our decision. Fortunately, besides the compensation and child support, I have my mother's inheritance and earnings from my writing. I won't face any difficulties until Emma reaches adulthood. I regret trusting Miles and allowing Emma to experience such unpleasant memories. Moving forward, I hope we can create happy moments together.
How did you like this story? If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to my channel. See you in the next video.